Good morning, grade 10s. This is now the exam questions on the parabola. Before we start on that, just remember the following. If we say g of x greater than 0, g of x is the y, it means the graph will be above the x-axis. Can you see the values will be above? If it's below the x-axis, it will be negative values, and if it's on the x-axis as your x-intercept, it will be 0. Now, if I must answer this question here, if you want, you can use your ruler, and because it's bigger than, you cover the bottom part, the negative part. Now you can see the positive values there. What will happen to my x? It will go to the right hand side, and what will happen to the x there? It goes to the left hand side. You can use the arrows there as your inequality signs. So if that's a -1, we say x is less than -1, or x is greater than 1. So that's why we practice your interval and other notations there. Or you can use your number line. To use the number line, you use your x-intercepts. You know that the y values will be 0. Then you use any value smaller than -1, and you substitute that value into your equation. And you only write down the sign where that's positive or negative. Then you choose a value between -1 and +1, any value. Substitute it into the given equation of the parabola. You only write down the sign. Remember, your x-intercepts will be zeros. And the same you do with this one. Choose any value bigger than 1, substitute into the equation, and then you get your sign. Now the question state greater than 0. Then you look at your plus signs. Can you see go to the left hand side? So that's x is less than -1, and there's no continuous line there, so you say or, and then you go to the right hand side. X is greater than +1. So you can either use the graph or the number line. If I say x is less than equal to 0, now it will be included, but less than 0 means negative. So again, the top part will be positive y values because it correlates or going to the positive y-axis, and this will be my negative value. So you cover the positive part, and you recognize that's the negative values. And what do you notice about the x-axis? The x values will be between -2 and 2. And because it's one solution there, you write it as 1. The x will lie between -2 and +2. Or you can use your number line once again. Right, the next part you must remember is the reflection. If the graph is reflected in the y-axis, so if you've got a point and it's reflected, turn to that side, mirror image, what will happen to my point? You'll see the y value stays the same, but my x value will have a different sign. So my rule will be x is getting a negative and the y stays the same. That means if you reflect it into the y-axis. If it's a reflection into the x-axis, what will happen now? Can you see your x coordinate will stay the same, but now your y, that one is negative, that one is positive, will change. So reflection and x stays the same coordinate and the y is getting a negative sign. Right. Let's do the product now. If you look at this one here, they say to you g of x times f of x is greater than 0. So to get a positive answer, it must be a positive times a positive. Remember, you're working with graphs, so that means your graphs must be above the x-axis, or it must be a negative times a negative. That means both graphs must be below the x-axis. So what I do is I use my x-intercepts and I do blocks. Look at the pink lines. So this is my x-intercept. I do a block there. This is my next x-intercept, so I do my block there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to multiply. Can you see this parabola? It's above, so that means it's a positive sign. Can you see this straight line? It's below the x-axis, so it's a negative. If you multiply those two signs, you get a negative answer. X-intercept is 0, So the sign is 0, so that stays 0 there. If you look at the value here, that straight line, it's above, so it's positive. Parabola, it's below, so it's negative. If you multiply those two, you get a negative answer. X-intercept result in a 0. Then you see from there the parabola is above positive, straight line is above positive, it's giving you a positive. It means then if you multiply those two graphs, it must be a positive answer. So you look, where will you find the positive? You'll see it's from that x-intercept to the right hand side. So you exclude the 0, answer will be x greater than 3. The next one we're going to do is where you compare two graphs when the one graph is greater or equal to another graph. So that means it will be, say, f of x is greater than g of x. So if you do this comparison here, you use the point of intersections. So you use the point of intersection. So that's my point of intersection. You make a block, so I'm using my purple highlighter there. And then you make another block there for the next intercept. If you look at the left hand side to this line intersection, you'll see that's my parabola, that's f. So the y values, it's bigger than the g values. So that's my question. So it means from that point of intersection to the left hand side. If you go between that intersect and this one here, you can notice that this is my straight line, so that's my G graph, so that's higher, the y values will be bigger than the f, so that means the f is less than, so that's not my solution there. If you look at this one here, you'll see that that's your g of x and that one is your f of x. So if you see that my f is bigger than my g, so that means then from that side to the outer side. So that means then my solution for this, x is less than -1 or x is greater than 3. So this is just for your exam questions. Now let's have a look at one exam question. If you look at this one here, they say now, this is November 2016, they say this is now given, right? So this is given to you, that a of x plus the q is then equal to, and the fx is in x plus c. S is then your x-intercept, r is also a x-intercept, t is the y-intercept. So first question is now, they ask you write down the range of g. Now to do the range, you must know that's the y values. So once again, you use your ruler and you put that perpendicular to your negative x-axis. So you put it over there, and now what do you notice there? So the smallest value you can get is -infinity, and the highest value you can get for the parabola will be 8. So now how will you write it down? So for the range, you will say then it's the y value. Element -infinity is round brackets and the 8 block brackets. Or you can write y is less and equal to 8. So that's your first question, that's the range. Next question is write down the x coordinate of r. Now look at the r. What you know about r, it's the x-intercept, and you know that y-axis will be the line of symmetry. So that means in the middle. So if this is 2 to the left hand side, to the right hand side, then you must go 2 to the left hand side. So if that is +2, this one will be -2. So the question is coordinates. So r, my x coordinate -2, my y coordinate will be 0, x-intercept. Next question now is to calculate the values of a and q. Now if you look at your question there, equation given ax squared plus q. So a will be the coefficient of my x squared and the q will be the constant. So that means I must find the equation of the parabola. First, with the previous video we said that you must first identify your y-intercept. The y-intercept will then be 8. So that means then your q will be 8. Then you must substitute another point. Because of this parabola, you can use point R, you've calculated, or you can use point S, which is then x and y. So if you look at the solution then, you can see, identify your y-intercept, that's 8. It implies that q is then 8. You can use either R or S. So that's -2 and 0, that's your x and your y. You substitute that into your equation, so the q is then 8. X will then be -2 and the y is 0. So that enables you to find A. So A is -2. And then you just substitute that into your equation. It must be negative because it's a maximum. It's concave down parabola. Next one is then you must determine the equation of f. Now what is f? F is my straight line. So that means it's the gradient, and that c is the y-intercept. Once again, you can look at that one there. The y-intercept is also 8. So I've got the value of c. This line is passing through point R. You've got the coordinates of R, and then you can substitute. So if you look at that one, y-intercept is 8. The point it's passing through is R, which is -2 and 0. That's x and y. Now you substitute that into your general form. So y is equal to mx plus the 8. The c is then into the place there. The 8 is into the place of c. X and y you substitute. That means the gradient will be 4. And then you substitute that into mx plus c. Right. So the next question is, now you must compare the graphs. And you must only find the x values. F of x equals g of x. So that means the two graphs are equal. That's the point of intersection. But you must only calculate the x values. So if I calculate the x values then, so that means that's the point of intersection. What is my x value? 0. What is my x value at R? We've calculated as -2. So you'll write your answer like -2, right? X is equal to -2 and x is equal to 0. That's my point R and T. No coordinates, they only ask you for the x values. Now for the next question, they ask you to find the x times g of x less than equal to 0. Now if I only work with the x, I work with the x-axis. If I work with the g of x, that's a graph. And it must be less than equal to 0. If I look at the solution there, I've explained it to you like this. So if I just look at my x-axis, it can be a positive. If my x-axis will be positive, it's the purple line there. Then to times that with a negative, remember my answer must be negative, so that means my graph must be below the x-axis. So that part, it's below the x-axis. Where they intersect, that's my solution. So x will be greater or equal to 2. Or I can get another option there, that my x-axis, I can take the negative side. So if I take my x-axis, the negative side there, then my graph must be positive. It means the graph must be above my x-axis. And where they intersect, that's my solution. So that is then between -2 and 0. And both answers must be written down. Right. So the last question here is the graph of h is obtained when g is reflected along the line y equals 0. Now y equals 0 means the x-axis. My rule for reflection in the x-axis means then that my x stays the same and my y is getting a negative. So that's my original equation. Right, so it's reflected in the x-axis, so the x values stay the same, and my y, this side, will get a negative. You can't leave the negative there, so you divide through, so that negative makes a positive, and that positive will become a negative. So that's your exam questions.